One sec, please. Okay. Okay. So just for Ben, so we are live. You can start whenever you want. Thank you.
Yes, I can start.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. Welcome to our first ever Renovation Summit. And you may ask why we have initiated this summit. And let me give you some background here. Most of the policy agenda in EU level is now dedicated to reaching the objectives of carbon neutrality in EU by 2050. And this year, we will see important proposals in the field of energy that will have long-lasting impacts on the way our homes are built and renovated. And it is crucial to get the policy mix right to support the social and cooperative and public housing providers in achieving fair energy transition and decarbonization, so that we can have the greening of our sector without pricing people out. That's very important. And it was this key concern in mind that led us to team up with IoT to check if funds from EU level are being dedicated to tasks by the national government. Over the next 2 days, we will try to get to the heart of some of the wicked issues, which will make or break the effort to reach our housing and energy targets. Now we kick off the stocktake of the uptake of recovery funds for renovation with the information available so far on the national intentions, and after that, we will have sessions to inspire, and after that, we will have a session to inspire with people-led renovation projects. And tomorrow, day 2, it's time to ask if we are getting the carbon and stick balance right in the view of the lack of affordable housing, and then take a reality check on the current gaps in funding when it comes to the road towards circularity. I hope we have managed to cover most of the key topics here. We want to convince the EU policymakers on the need to start from what works on the ground, for example, with people-centered measures and sufficient financial resources to achieve the decarbonization while preserving social fairness and affordability. So, in the first summit, we bring together relevant stakeholders to discuss and promote the approach. Let us now listen to the message prepared to us by Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, Mrs. Elsa Ferreira, for our event today. And before we come to the reaction from the IoT, Marie Linda, from the president from the IoT. So first, I think we have a video from the commissioner.
Ladies and gentlemen, my thanks to Housing Europe and to your members, both for your invitation and for the organization of this Renovation Summit. Your timing is excellent. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape the future of our continent. As part of our response to the crisis, Europe has taken the unprecedented step of borrowing on financial markets to invest in a sustainable recovery. In the next few years, European investments in many regions and member states will be supported to be the double or even the triple. How we invest this money will set the tone for the next decade and beyond. We must invest the money wisely and efficiently, picking excellent projects with a long-term return. And we must invest the money equitably, ensuring that no region, which means no citizen, is left behind. Success requires that rare combination of lofty vision and down-to-earth planning. So today's Renovation Summit and other events like this have a crucial role to play. Today, we must plan the practical renovations, which will set up a greener future for everybody. I will touch upon three special opportunities and fields of work. First, the renovation wave. Second, affordable housing. Third, the new project, the European Bauhaus. The first field of work, the renovation wave. Okay, in 2018, data show that one in seven in the European Union lives in a dwelling of poor quality. Furthermore, 34 million Europeans struggle to keep their homes warm in winter. Poorly insulated homes are both a social source of discomfort, it's a social crisis, but also an environmental crisis. So last year, we in the European Commission adopted an ambitious and comprehensive strategy to boost building renovation in Europe. And this is what we call the renovation wave. Our objective by 2030 is to double the annual energy savings achieved through renovations. This means that tens of millions of buildings will need to be renovated and brought to significantly higher performance levels. We will need bottom-up engagement and planning, adequate resources, and an enabling regulatory framework for each and every country and region in Europe. The challenge is huge. And COVID has made the challenge more pressing. For many people, the crisis has undermined their ability to cover housing-related expenses. But at the same time, the crisis has underlined how essential a decent home is to health and for your well-being. So renovations will help us kickstart the economic recovery. The renovation of social and affordable housing districts will help reduce energy poverty, create local jobs, of course, and bring long-lasting social benefits for communities. Cohesion policy has been and will remain the main European public investor in energy efficiency, as in many other sectors. In the 2014-2020 programs, close to 13 billion euros were invested in energy efficiency of buildings, both public buildings and residential buildings. And we'll continue to play this role. In the new 2021-27 program period, it will go on. Plans will be drawn up in the coming months, and I urge you to get involved in planning and delivery. We need, in fact, high-quality projects, deep renovations to public buildings such as hospitals, schools, universities, and deep renovations to multi-apartment blocks and social housing to tackle energy poverty and help low-income households. And this brings me to my second topic, which is related with this one, affordable housing. Cohesion policy will help to keep housing affordable. We are working with the Commission's Affordable Housing Initiative, which will pilot the renovation of 100 social and affordable housing districts. We are directly investing in this process, but we are also investing in developing new materials and solutions for sustainable and affordable construction through our work on innovation and smart specialization. Capacity and expertise is crucial in the public sector, but also in the private and construction sector. Cohesion policy already provides technical assistance. We are now working to set up dedicated technical support on building renovation. And the third field of work, and this is a new opportunity, is the new European Bauhaus. And our goal is sustainability with style. We are taking Europe's bold goals of sustainability, making them practical and making them beautiful, making them bold, stylish, sustainable designs available to everyone. Design thinking for buildings, design thinking for entire neighborhoods, design thinking for lifestyle, design thinking for events and places to meet and share, and much, much more. For this audacious dream to become reality, we need architects and designers of the future, but also planners, engineers of the future. We are still in the design phase of this project. We are beginning a conversation, but I already urge everybody to get involved in discussions, in identifying good examples, and in creating and proposing examples. In conclusion, Europe is at a crucial moment in planning the investments to deliver on our 2030 emissions targets while making housing better for everybody. So renovations have a key role to play in our green future. And this conference is perfectly timed to feed ideas into our plans. Our plans for the renovation wave, our ambitious goal to double by 2030 annual energy saving through renovation. Our plans for affordable housing and the investments in public and private capacity, as well as building materials and techniques. And our plans also for the new European Bauhaus, a new movement to blend sustainability with style and make it affordable and comfortable for all. These ambitious goals require us to work together, European Commission, Member States, regions, municipalities, and community itself with the architects, designers, builders, engineers. We need everyone's ideas and investment. So I wish you a fruitful event today, and I look forward to our next steps in working together. Stay safe.
And thank you to the Commissioner. We have huge challenges, we know that, and there are some measures to solve these challenges, and we have to have a transition of the funds to change the reality out on the ground. So an inspiring speech, but we have to also transform it into the reality. And with these words, I will give the floor to Marie, President of IUT. The floor is yours, Marie.
Thank you very much, and ladies and gentlemen. As the president of the International Union of Tenants, I would like to take the opportunity to say thank you to Housing Europe for letting me address this conference. Renovation is a very important question for tenants all over Europe. And Bent Madsen, I will also thank you to let us do this work together, and I hope the conference can be the start. I think sustainability with style and affordability is three words that we need to work further on. But I will start right now because we are in a very special situation right now. The pandemic has shown us how overcrowding in housing has been a driver in spreading the virus. The pandemic has highlighted the importance of decent living and condition in housing. The pandemic also set a light on evictions. We know that all around Europe, the numbers of people in homelessness is rising. So these questions we are going to discuss on this conference is very important because it sets the light of that renovation can do more for affordable, social and affordable housing for everyone. And I think it's also important, this is going to be an important question for the economy to recover from the corona pandemic. And the Commission has identified a number of principles in the statement about the renovation wave. I would like to set focus on a few topics. Affordability. Making energy performing and sustainable buildings widely available, particularly for medium and lower income households, but also for vulnerable people and areas. That must be a priority. We must get the energy poverty away. And when we're trying to reach the climate goals, we must think it has to be fair and socially balanced. Therefore, this must be clearly connected to the ambitions of the Green Deal. Circularity and life cycle focus. To minimize the environmental footprints of buildings requires resources, efficiency, and focus on circular thinking. The renovation we do must lead to a carbon sink. As a president of a tenant organization all over the world, I also think it's very important that we listen to the tenants, let them have direct involvement in the renovation process. And the last topic I want to address the conference is the principle of housing cost neutrality. It must be a cornerstone of housing policy. As renovation costs can be passed into the tenants, as renovation costs can be passed on to the tenants in most stages, renovation often contributes that entire quarters are being gentrified. The model of housing cost neutrality therefore should combine social and climate goals to prevent renovictions, eviction by renovation. I agree with the Commissioner, Mrs. Elsa Ferreira, that no citizen should be left behind. Let us begin our trip to reach the climate goals with fair and socially balanced. I hope that this conference, the Renovation Summit, will be the start to reach the goal that in the future, every child in Europe will have a safe and green home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. And thank you for participating and joining us here and be with us on this event and these very important issues. You focus on a fair and socially balanced change and to avoid renovation and to have cost neutrality and tenants involvement. I think it's very important topics. When we have these high goals about the greening of our sectors, it's very important that the greening and the social balance, they go hand in hand. So thank you for stressing these very important points. And after this, and thank you again, after this, I will give the floor to you, Shreya, and take us further through the day.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon to all. Indeed, after those very inspiring words from the Commissioner and from Marie from IUT, we're going to try to answer a very fundamental question. We heard the Commissioner Ferreira saying that the cohesion policy is still the most important source of EU funding to renovation and to housing at the EU level. Now, the key question is, can we count on the recovery and resilience plans to actually bring us towards the fair energy transition that will leave no one behind, which actually we were talking about before? So to answer this question, we're going in 3 steps. We're going first to see an overview of what's happened in different countries. First of all, starting with our colleague Edith Lakatos. Then we will have a more in-depth look at 3 countries. And finally, we're going to have a conversation with a representative of the European Commission to see how the European Commission will help countries and housing providers to absorb those funding and set up the necessary schemes and framework to get us into the fair energy transition in the social housing sector. So I'm glad to first give the floor to my colleague Edith Lakatos, which will give us an overview of the recovery and resilience plans in Europe. Edith, over to you.
Thank you very much, Julian, for your kind words. I would like to share my screen as well because I have a presentation. So just a moment and I will open it. The screen is a little bit slow. I'm sorry about that. Yes, so what I will do just in a few minutes to summarize a little bit what we know already about the draft recovery plans. We know already some hints that were given by the draft budgetary plans that were put together last year. And the European Commission says that at least 6 countries formulated some measures financed by the recovery plan in their budgetary plan in 2020. So just to give you a few details, Denmark, for example, informed the Commission that there is a governmental agreement on green recovery that will give a substantial budget to energy efficiency renovation. As for France, it assesses for the first time the environmental impact of the state budgets, and it also puts at least 6 billion euro to support building renovations. As for Ireland, we see in their draft budgetary plan precise numbers on the number of social homes that they would like to build in 2021 and 22, and we see also that the specific schemes are planned to be implemented. And finally, in the Netherlands, we saw that they put a big emphasis in 2021 to invest in housing construction. So if we go further, based on the data of the draft plans and based on what our members communicated to us, we estimated that among the 27 member states, there is at least 43 billion euro of allocation in the energy efficiency of the buildings. And we see the biggest allocation in Italy. It is spectacular and almost doubling what France put on energy efficient allocation to buildings. But just looking at the allocation might be not that wise. So it's also good to see what's the relationship with the whole budget of the recovery plans. So here we have a slightly different picture, because we see that Italy is leading the way, but there are also other countries who put significant amount to energy efficient renovation compared to their whole recovery plan budget. So just to give you a little bit of information of what kind of programs the different countries are planning. So Italy is planning to put together Ecobonus and Simobonus programs that will be presented by the president of Federkasse later. We also know that Germany will use their existing program and will tap up this existing program from the recovery plan. We also know that France put together a very ambitious budget for the thermal retrofitting of buildings, and there is €500 million dedicated for social housing. We also know that Austria is planning a renovation program of more than €200 million. Denmark is quite unique because it is planning to do a program for rural public housing, so also combating all that is shrinking in these regions. We see in the Greek plan that is a very ambitious €1 billion to the upgrading of the national building stock, which is outstanding, which if we consider what have happened in the previous years. And we see also that in Finland and in Sweden, there are some nice and quite big envelopes for energy efficient measures in building. Of course, it's not all the detail. We are still working on our research and waiting, of course, for the Commission, for the assessment of the Commission, and maybe there will be other countries who will put also energy efficient renovation in their reports, in their plans. What we also saw is that adaptation measures and preparation for climate change consequences are also part of the plan. So Greece is planning some investment in flood control and also would like to put an emphasis on smart water management. Italy is putting anti-seismic intervention as a part of the plan. And in Latvia and in Slovenia, there is also some effort on adapting to climate change and to manage disasters. What's happening in the area of access to housing, social housing and housing first for homeless people? We see Portugal, which has outstanding approach because there are different programs targeting different groups of people. So there is a grant for urgent accommodation that is planned, a housing first program, an affordable student housing scheme. Then we see in Slovenia, there will be a rental housing construction scheme, very ambitious from the Greek plan is that there is a social housing pilot program that will be put together in Athens and in Thessaloniki, which is something that is really needed, seeing that the homelessness is very high in Greece and it's increasing. And we see also that Hungary, from the eastern part, put together a program for the most disadvantaged settlements, so 300 disadvantaged settlements whose housing conditions are not decent. So this is only a kind of a snapshot of what we got as information from our members, from public data, and we are, of course, waiting for the Commission to assess the plans, and we are waiting also for some changes. And what we are planning to do is we would like to put together all this data, all this information, analyzing the impact on affordable housing, putting together country profiles, and we are going to hopefully publish this report in September 2021. So you will hear more about this in the future. Thank you, and back to Julian.
Thank you very much, Edith. That was indeed very encouraging, because we see that if the plans come together, indeed around more than 40 billion euro will be available for energy efficiency in housing. But we also know at the same time, we should never forget that it's only a tiny proportion of what is needed to bring the social housing sector into the decarbonization and maintaining the level of affordability. We also see in your presentation that not everything is completely focused on energy efficiency. We also have countries that actually are going to invest in rather social aspect. Now we're going to deep dive in different countries to see a bit more of what's going to happen in the coming 2 years. And first, we're going to travel to France with Karine Puyol from Union Sociale pour l'Habitat, the French Social Housing Federation. Karine will present to us the current situation of the recovery plan for social housing. So, Karine, good afternoon, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julien, and hello, everybody. First, I would like to share my presentation. So, but for the moment, I cannot. Maybe. So, one moment, please. Did you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Yes, now, yes.
Okay. So, one moment.
Yes, good.
Okay. So yes, I will do a short presentation about the European Recovery Plan for France. For France and for social housing, we have 3 tools. The first one, as Edith presented, is the Recovery and Resilience Facility. So it's a total amount of 100 billions of euros, included 40 billions from Europe. This plan have been presented by the government in September, and it has been officially presented to the Commission 2 weeks ago. It has to be now adopted by the Commission and by the Council also. The second tool is REACT-EU. So REACT-EU is a supplement of structural fund for the countries for the period 21-24. For France, it means 3.9 billion of euros dedicated for emergency measure due to the crisis. And of course, the third tools for renovation is not only, but for renovation also is the next cohesion policy program. So for France, it means 16 billion, more than 16 billion of euros. So European Recovery Plan for Social Housing. So from the Recovery and Resilience Facility, so the European Recovery Plan, so as Edith said before, France has programmed 6.6 billion of euros for the renovation of building, and as planned, including 500 million dedicated only for social housing. So at the end, it's not so much for our sector, even if it's important. even if it's important. In this 500 million for the renovation of social housing, 445 millions should be dedicated for deep renovation, so restructuration and important renovation. It means an average of 11,000 euros per dwelling, so it's quite important. The plan also wants to support innovation and industrialization of the renovation. So it dedicates 40 million for this type of project. So mainly it will support project as Energy Sprong for the renovation. So it is interesting for our sector. Also, the plan previews 15 million for overseas region, so Guadeloupe, Martinique, La Réunion, etc., for the renovation of social housing. So, in addition of this national fund supported by Europe, you have also REACT-EU. So we can see that some regions in France, not all the region, but some region plan to focus some fund from REACT-EU to the transition, to the energy transition, including renovation of building. So we have some regions who will dedicate a REACT-EU fund for social housing renovation. And of course, we have the ERDF and ESF for the period 2021-27. Each French region has previous a specific budget for thermal renovation for social housing. So all the region will plan to spend money for this specific question. Actually, there is a lot of delay for this specific for the preparation of the cohesion policy, due of course to the crease, but due also to the other fund to plan. But we hope that all the document will be the programmation of this next cohesion policy will be ready for September, and the same for the resilient recovery and resilient facility. An important things for us to know, and also for our members, for social housing provider, is the fact that the Commission asked that one project cannot be supported by the three of this program. So recovery plan, REACT-EU and ERDF next generation cannot support the same project. So it is important for administration and also for social housing provider to distinguish a project which have the support of the RRF or REACT-EU or ERDF. So in terms of strategic planification, there is a lot to plan, but we can say that we are quite satisfied that Europe supports our sector like that. Thank you for your attention, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me.
Thank you, Karine. And indeed, if you have questions to Karine, please use the chat box. We hope that we will have time to pick up at least one question per presenter after that, but we are on a tight schedule, and yeah, let's see if we manage. After France, we're going to travel to Italy with Luca Talori, the president of Federcasa, the Federation of Public Housing Company in Italy. So Luca will in particular focus on one new scheme in Italy, Ecobonus, that has benefited from the Recovery and Resilience Facility. So, Luca, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Julien. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank the organizer for inviting me. I'm going to briefly present the implementation of the recovery plan in our sector in Italy. Julien, can you start the presentation file?
Yes, I think we'll ask Clara, our colleague, to do it. It will start in a few minutes. So if my colleagues hear us, or Abderrahim, Abdou, if you hear us. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Italy is the first beneficiary. Okay, this is the start. Okay, go on. Italy is the first beneficiary in absolute value of two main instruments of Next Generation EU. The first, the device for recovery and resilience, and the second, the recovery assistance package for cohesion and the territories of Europe, REACT EU. The FRR alone guarantees a research of 191.5 billion euros to be used in the period 2021-2026, of which 68.9 billion are non-replayable grants. Italy also intends to make full use of which for our country is estimated 122.6 billion euros. The six missions of the PNR share transversal priorities relating to equal generational, gender and territorial opportunities. The PNRR is divided into 16 components grouped into 6 missions. The components that include initiative of interest for public social housing are the C3, energy efficiency and building renovation, within the mission M2, green revolution and ecological transition, in particular with the investment project line energy efficiency and seismics in private and public residential housing, and C2, social infrastructures for families, communities, and third sector, included the mission M5, inclusion and cohesion, in particular in the scope of intervention of urban regeneration. I'm going to illustrate them briefly below. Okay, go on. Okay, in this slide, there are general objectives, the main goals, framework, investment, and I think Ecobonus and Sisma bonus for energy efficiency and building safety is a tool for the extraordinary maintenance of existing buildings. This is the point. And in another slide, go on. Another slide, go on. This goal deals the construction of a new buildings through urban generation, because in Italy, this is an important point, because the city to have this point for priority, To that end, every year in Italy, the state confiscates thousands of assets from the mafia. According to data from the Ministry of the Interior, a total 5,000 assets were confiscated in 2019 alone. The plan provides for an extraordinary program of intervention amounting 3,000 million to enhance part of this asset in order to enhance public housing, regenerate urban areas, improve social, cultural, and proximity service. Okay, go on. This main reform as a precondition to implement the plan. This is fundamental for respecting the timeline and the simplification of public contracts is a fundamental goal for Italy. Another slide. Okay. This element is crucial for reducing bureaucracy because in Italy the bureaucracy structure is heavy and the implementation times or the decree law that will coin the measure will be approved by May 2021 is a fundamental. Okay, this is the element essential of the PNR in Italy. And thank you. And sorry for my English, but I think this slide is good.
Yes, and indeed, thank you very much, Luca, for this. It's a lot of information, and I think it's been very useful. We will, of course, share all the material to all the participants afterwards, but I think it's very important to see the level of investment that Italy foresees coming from all type of instrument from the next generation EU, looking at renovation, new construction, and also the simplification of the planning policy. So that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Luca. After going to Italy, we're going to the last country where we want to have a focus on. This is Portugal, and we have Pedro Pinto, the president of Gebalis, which is the public housing agency in Lisbon. Pedro, good afternoon, and so we're happy to have you with us. So please tell us a bit more in detail what's going on in Portugal in relation to the recovery plan. Thank you.
Hello, I'll just have to start by sharing my screen. I think it's working.
It's working, yes.
Oh, sorry. At the beginning. So thank you again for this opportunity and this invitation. It's in fact an opportunity for us at Gebalis to be part of the Renovation Summit 2021 and to share our perspective and also experiences on fighting energy poverty in social housing. So this is a quick presentation on Gebalis, a municipal-owned company responsible for the management of Lisbon's public housing. We stand out as Portugal's largest public provider and tend to our mission based upon a proximity criterion with a strong perspective on integration, social development, and also environmental concerns. We have local offices spread throughout the city near the communities. It's more than 61,000 residents, 66 neighborhoods, over 3,000 buildings, 1,000 commercial spaces, and the public housing stock in Lisbon, it's a bit larger than Portugal, so it represents almost 12% of family dwellings. Also complementary to our core activities of management and social monitoring, we have a very strong politics on program development and participation in local community projects and to raise awareness, build capacity, and promote the development of residents and communities. An overview on what we've been up to in Lisbon under the leadership of our mayor, Fernando Medina. The Lisbon municipality has been tackling the housing challenges by boosting social and affordable programs, by building more housing supported by clearer and easier access regulation, building a new generation and sustainable housing units, buying houses and converting them into affordable housing. We have also increasing investment in the municipal lease subsidy program, a program that consists of granting lease subsidy to households that have rented or intend to rent a house and whose income doesn't allow them to access the housing market. And more recently, a program called Safe Rent, which rents Airbnbs and then sublets them to people by paying the difference. Gebalis, on the other hand, has been rehabilitating housing units that will be swiftly reintroduced to the municipal programs, implementing an unprecedented investment in the renewal of pre-existing municipal neighborhoods with energy efficiency improvements and also environmental sustainability. And linked to this vast investment, we've been developing and supporting the local projects involving the communities in the management process. And we also have the innovation part, like with programs like LIFE, which is shaped to address the lack of housing oriented to the needs of people with reduced mobility, with profound disabilities. So as far as our work is concerned, we don't have, there aren't any energy poverty mitigation programs targeting municipal housing. It's actually embedded in our municipal housing strategy, both in renovation, rehabilitation, and new construction. This issue of energy and resource poverty is related to the condition of people's socio-economical resources, which have been aggravated by the pandemic that brought many people to a situation of deprivation in several dimensions for which they were not prepared. And the assumption of the different housing support programs also allowed during the pandemic for all residents to request rent reviews in face of the new and unforeseen situation. So the housing programs also already foreseen the formulation of the rent, the effort required from the residents to contract energy and water necessary for an adequate and dignified habitat, for which residents are directly responsible. So the access to energy, both energy and water resources, was perverted during the COVID state of emergency law, which maintained minimum supplies of water and electricity in situations where the contracts presented a payment deficit. Specifically on fighting energy poverty and attentive to environmental issues of tackling climate change and progressive decarbonization, while maintaining social equity and accessibility to housing, Lisbon has been building a new generation of dwellings, and that already include the production of renewable energy for self-consumption, the use of rainwater, or the reuse of rainwater, the profitability of roofs as a small green space. And in addition, the house itself can evolve or adapt to the needs of the family, thus achieving decarbonization while preserving both social fairness and affordability, and it's a people-centered measure. From our point of view and in the implementation of the rehabilitation programs, the realization of larger scale rehabilitation work pursues the current legislation and the recommended good environmental practices, which are already included in the specifications of public procurement, requirements for work materials that respect the recommendations for minimum A or A+ classification, as a way to influence the suppliers to the recommended good practices. The buildings under our management date at this moment for several concessions from the 1940s to 2020. And their rehabilitation, especially at the level of external envelope of the buildings, is studied case by case. It is a rehabilitation that intends to bring to the residents more safety, comfort, better thermal behavior of the buildings, and consequently, better housing conditions. because the quality and the dignity of public housing as a whole is a main concern at Gebalis. It's our constant objective when preserving our renovation. There is also the expectation that the buildings intervened by our rehabilitation program, Aqui há mais bairro, have a correspondence of lower energy costs, both in the consumption of the buildings and in the dwellings themselves. Due to a better isolation, ventilation, we expect a great result of the rehabilitation. It's a work in progress, therefore there isn't yet a full longitudinal study that can confirm this or disprove this expectation. Because we believe that energy poverty can also be reduced if the behavior associated with the use of the various energy sources is the most appropriate possible by enhancing maximum consumption efficiency through our own programs and projects. I've spoken of LIFE, but we also have Lodge Convidia, Guardians of the Gardens, Rock the House, which we develop ourselves or with the partners or other entities and organizations that are part of the territories under Gebalis management. The environmental and civic awareness and education, either regarding housing or the use and enjoyment of public spaces and equipments, are opportunities. We see them as opportunities for information and dissemination on social tariffs for electricity and water already implemented. So, and to sum up, the recovery and the resilience plan will allow Portugal and Lisbon to enhance this strategy towards more public, social, and affordable, dignified housing. Strong financial instruments without precedents for us in Portugal. We have to see it as a great opportunity to tackle the housing challenges that will support a new generation of housing politics in Portugal. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Pedro.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, so we see that at least for Italy and Portugal, but for other many countries, the recovery plan will make an important part, a significant part of the total public investment into social housing, whether it's for renovation or new construction. So there is a sense of great responsibility from the government, obviously, but also from the European Commission to make that happen. And this is what we're going to discuss right now. We do not have time to go into the question for this first series of presenters, but hopefully at the end it will be possible. Now let's have a look at what the European Commission can do to help further countries and housing providers to make the best of the recovery and resilience funds. So we're going to discuss with three speakers from the European Commission, and first of all with Julien Guigues from the Recovery and Resilience Task Force. So this is a task force that's dedicated to manage the recovery and resilience plans. And Julien will bring us into some important but technical discussion about some of the legal aspects, including state aid aspects. So, Julien, good afternoon, and over to you. I see that we are present. Yeah, we are setting up your presentation right now.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Julien. I hope you can hear me well.
Very much.
I really wish to thank Housing Europe for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to make this presentation. And I must say I'm very impressed by the level of information that you have managed to gather and present so far. So yes, as you said, I am Julien Guigues and I am a policy officer in the task force of the European Commission dealing with the RRF. I understand that the objective of this presentation is to present the legal implications of the RRF for affordable housing providers with a focus on state aid, but I think it's important to make maybe two very important preliminary remarks. The first one is that the legal implications are mostly supported by the member state. I mean, the member state design their plans, make their policy choices, and they have to respect the RF regulation on the stated rules. And against this background, I would say that the consequences for affordable housing providers are more indirect than direct. But of course, it's very important to recall them, and I will do that. The second message is that the notion of affordable housing is very broad. You are the expert, I am not. But you have many ways to make housing affordable, from subsidizing the rent, facilitating access to property, facilitating affordable investment in energy efficiency. You can have financial instruments or grants. And of course, the legal implications vary greatly depending on the segment of the chain of value in which we place ourselves. So I will do my best. 10 minutes is very short. But against this background, I think I will try to structure this presentation, if you move to the next slide, around 3 key messages. The first key message is that the legal implications of the RF go beyond stated rules. And we are going to show these rules. Yes, you can stay on that slide. And I think that from my perspective, these legal requirements are clearly an opportunity for housing and affordable housing. The second message is that stated rules apply, and it's extremely important to ensure this stated compliance, because we don't want that we approve national plans or national recovery and resilience plans, and that in a few months or in a few years after approving it, we discover that we have state aid issues, and that makes the implementation of a plan complicated. And then the last message will be to share with you some impressions from the ground. What are we seeing in the plans? What are the constraints and what are the opportunities? But I see that you have already, with the 3 presentations, largely started to address it. So if we just look at this first slide, I will maybe not spend too long, but as you know, there are many requirements to make a plan eligible. You have the measures which are included in the plan need to fit within one of the 6 pillars. And here I would say that housing is a very good candidate, because I think half of the 6 pillars correspond to housing. You have one which relates to green transition, another one which relates to smart, sustainable and inclusive growth, and another one about social and territorial cohesion. And I think housing fits well in these 3 pillars. The second requirement is that you need to address the country-specific recommendations. And here there are 2 angles, either the angle of the green transition, and many countries have to address green transition. And here again, renovation, housing, energy efficiency in housing can be a very good way to address it. And the second angle is the angle of social housing. And here we have a couple of countries who need to address social housing in their country-specific recommendations. Then you have a 37 and the 20% digital target, which is a strong requirement. And the need also to avoid double funding. And I think Commissioner Ferreira emphasized the importance of EU cohesion policy, but what we really want to avoid is that the RF finances measures of investment which are already covered by other EU instruments. We want additionality. And I think one of the difficulties of a member state is that they don't know yet fully well, that will come of sure, what they will put in their next programming cycle for 21-27. And therefore, it's a bit difficult to justify the complementarity between the RRF and the cohesion policy. Then you have a very, very strong requirement, which in my view is a very important opportunity from the housing perspective, is the need to respect the do no significant harm principle. And I think that's one of the big novelties of this instrument, and that's why it's I think I would say so exciting, is that member states need to ensure that what they put in the plans do not go against this do no significant harm principle. So you have some guidance. You have 6 principles to cover. I will not go into the detail, but that's a very strong constraint, I would say, for the member state, but that's an opportunity from the housing perspective. So that's what I wanted to say about the RRF. As you know, in the end, we perform assessment of the plans, and we need to give an A. So there is no semi-pass the test. You need to have an A grade for the CSRs, for the green target, the digital target, the DNSH. So these are very strong requirements. So that was it for the I would say RF related legal constraint. If we move to the next slide, then so I will dive into the stated rules, which I think was also one of the key questions you were asking. I think there are two key messages to raise about the stated rules. So as you know, the stated rules apply to the RF. They were applying before the RF, and they will apply after. And I think we have here two key concerns. The first one is the reputational risk, as I was telling you. We don't want to approve an RF with problematic measures from the stated angle. And then, as you know, we don't want to miss stated measures, because if the member state implement a stated measure which hasn't been notified and which should have been notified, then it's considered as unlawful. And then it means that it has no legal value and it's potentially exposed to recovery. And of course, this is something that we really want to avoid for a successful RRF. Then if you move to the next slide, there is this decision tree. I'm not sure I will go too much in the detail of it, but basically you have a three-step reasoning that you need to apply. And when it comes to affordable housing, first of all, we need to have in mind that not all the measures which will support affordable housing will entail state aid. They might not have economic activity. They might be no selective, which means that they apply evenly to any beneficiaries. They may entail no advantage to any beneficiary. And they may have no impact on trade because they are too small or because they have very purely impacts. So from this perspective, it's not to be excluded that many measures that will support affordable housing will be considered as not entailing state aid. But even if you are in a situation where the measure is a state aid, there are configurations where there is exemption. It's possible for the member state not to notify the measures. And here, it's the case if the aid is already covered by an existing aid scheme, if it's block exempted, that it's eligible to the general block exemption regulation, or if it is a service of general economic interest. On here, I think I will not go much more in the detail unless you have questions. And then in the end of the day, if all these conditions are not met, there is an obligation for the member states to notify. So then the compatibility assessment is made under Article 107 of TFEU, and some guidelines apply. I will not say more. There is a specific process. If you want to move to the next slide, if you have questions, you have the website of DG Competition, which is very well done, where you can raise your question directly to them. And you also need to know that there is a project to revise the GBER, the block exemption regulation, to facilitate and to expand the scope of measures which would not need a notification. But the project is not finalized yet or approved, but it was just for your information. So this being said, we can move to the next slide. And I think, I wanted to share with you how much excited we were about seeing so many measures related to building renovation, energy efficiency, but it's been flagged by Edith in a very nice presentation and by the three speakers before with the plans of France, Italy, and Portugal. What we can tell you is that at this stage, energy renovation at large will account for around 50 billion euros. So that's a big amount. And we are very excited to see measures related to replacement of oil-based heating system, energy efficiency in residential housing, guarantee schemes to finance loans in the private sectors, technical assistance, one-stop shops. So you have some mix of investments and reforms. And in the field of social housing / affordable housing, we are also seeing very interesting on the success stories and very nice project. I think for Greece, it was mentioned the projects of housing for students. We are seeing initiatives related to renewal of national housing strategies, projects aiming at assisting local authorities to develop long-term strategic views of housing. So, I mean, all this is extremely promising, and we are very, very happy to see that from the RS perspective, the constraint, I mean, the RF and the state aid are not constrained, but more opportunities for housing. I mean, that's a clear message. On the last message relates to state aid. I think that state aid will not be a constraint for social housing, for the very simple reason that state aid rules are very constraining in cases where you don't have market failures. In situations where you would have private investments, which would be able to fill the gap. But for social housing, it's clearly a field where you need public money, and therefore I mean, state aid rules will not be problematic. At least this is what we are seeing at this stage. So I think I will stop here, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Julien. I myself have many questions, but to be fair to the colleagues that will speak after, we'll keep it for the end. Hopefully you can stay with us. In any case, it was a lot of very useful information, and we're happy to see that there are templates to help public authorities and housing providers to be guided through the recovery and resilience plan. Yeah, as I said, we need to move on to the next speaker. So we're going to have a very nice debate with Alan Monks from the Directorate General Economic and Finance from the European Commission on the question of the interplay between the recovery plans on the one hand and different EU tools related to fiscal policy like the Stability and Growth Pact. How do those two in a way, building blocks will work together in order to, at the end of the day, increase the level of public investment into the area? This is what we are talking about since the beginning of the session. So, Alan, good morning, good afternoon. Very nice to be with you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Julien. Can you hear me okay?
Very much, yeah.
And thank you, Edith, for sharing my presentation. So as Julien said, I work in DG ECFIN, the Economics and Financial Affairs DG of the European Commission. I work in the Fiscal Policy Unit, dealing mainly with issues related to the Stability and Growth Pact, which is what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk, as Julien said, about the interactions between the EU fiscal policy tools, such as the Stability and Growth Pact, and the delivery of the recovery plans. If you go to the next slide. So in the presentation, I'm going to start off with this kind of element of context. I'm going to talk about the fiscal policy reaction of both member states and the EU to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm then going to talk about the interaction between the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the EU fiscal rules. And then I'll end by looking at our review of the EU economic governance framework, including the fiscal rules and the debate that we're going to have about investment. So on this slide, I'll talk about the fiscal policy reaction to the pandemic. So as I'm sure many of you know, member states have extended a very large amount of fiscal support to their economies since the start of the pandemic, both to address the health crisis and to address the economic crisis. These measures, this fiscal support, was facilitated by the activation of what we call the General Escape Clause of the Stability and Growth Pact. So in March 2020, the European Commission proposed and the European Council endorsed the activation of this clause. And this means that so long as this clause is activated, we're not going to ask member states to have any fiscal adjustment. So we're saying to them that you can do whatever it takes to meet this crisis, to adopt measures to address the crisis, and we will come back to the fiscal rules, to the full implementation of the fiscal rules when we deactivate the clause. So you had this massive reaction from member states, but also you had unprecedented fiscal actions from the EU itself. Karine has already mentioned the REACT EU program. I'm also thinking of the Next Generation EU, obviously, of which the Recovery and Resilience Facility is part. And let's not forget just the historic size of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, the very large amount of grants and loans that will be provided to member states to help their recovery from this crisis. Many other instruments were adopted, for example, the SURE instrument, which is an instrument to provide financing to member states for their efforts to help the labor market, and also instruments to help the financing, so put to aid public and private investment, such as those initiatives undertaken by the European Investment Bank. So at the moment in the European Commission, we are looking at the stability and convergence programs that member states have submitted. We will be giving our opinions and recommendations on those programs in the coming weeks. But more recently, in March of this year, we issued a communication giving some orientations to member states about their fiscal policy in the medium term and how we could move from a crisis phase into a recovery phase. And we gave some kind of broad orientations on fiscal policies. We said, for example, that we should avoid a premature withdrawal of fiscal policy before the recovery has taken hold. And we also put this emphasis, as Julian has mentioned, this important emphasis on investment, on prioritizing public investment within the budgets of member states. So that obviously links to the priorities of the Recovery and Resilience Facility and many other of the EU fiscal policy tools that we have introduced. If you go to the next slide, it's just showing really some figures on the size of the response from member states. So it's showing that in 2020, member states adopted measures to the extent of 4% of GDP, which is a very large amount of measures for 1 year. But also, in addition to those measures, they introduced very important liquidity measures. So for example, guarantees to businesses to keep them afloat during the crisis. And they amounted to 19% of GDP. So we're looking at very significant support from member states. If you could go to the next slide, please. So here I will talk about the interaction between the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the EU fiscal rules. So as I've said, we've activated the General Escape Clause, and what we've said that we will maintain the General Escape Clause at least until the end of 2021 and possibly into 2022. And that is something that we will decide on later this month and announce. But this means that we are giving member states this fiscal space during the opening years of the recovery and resilience plans in order to support the implementation of the recovery and resilience plans. But it's also important to bear in mind that there is, this dual causality here. So, as the member states implement the recovery and resilience plans, this is going to aid their economic growth, and this is going to improve their fiscal outcomes. So in fact, that will help them reach the fiscal rules when we return to those fiscal rules. And also the Recovery and Resilience Facility is providing significant fiscal support itself to the member states. So during this recovery phase from the crisis, the EU will be financing these investments that is helping economies to recover from the crisis and helping them to improve their own fiscal situation. On the final slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about our review, as I mentioned, of the EU Economics Governance Framework, and more specifically about the EU fiscal rules. So in February of last year, February 2020, we issued our communication on the Economics Governance Framework. So this was an assessment of the governance framework and of the fiscal rules to see how they performed over the last 10 years, how they performed after the financial crisis, and what were the achievements and maybe some of the drawbacks. And in this report, in this communication, we included a number of questions that we want to discuss as part of a public debate, which we had hoped to start in March 2020, but obviously we got overtaken by events, so we have paused that debate. But one of the issues for the debate will be how can our fiscal rules better incentivize public investment and private investment? So what can our fiscal rules do to have a sustainable level of public investment in order to meet our goals, in order to meet the EU's goals in terms of environmental policy, in the European Green Deal, and in terms of the digital transition, for example. It is also a debate that takes place in the context of a very low level of public investment that we saw in the 10 years following the financial crisis. So as I said, this public debate is currently on hold, but we've said that we will return to it, we will relaunch it when the economic recovery from this crisis takes hold. So hopefully in the coming months, we would start that debate and then move toward thinking about what we could do with our fiscal rules. On the next slide, I've just provided a few references to the documents that I've mentioned, but just to quickly sum up, I mean, the word that I would like you all to retain here is investment. So all of these things are trying to increase investment and create incentives for private investment so that we can complete the recovery and work toward our environmental and our digital goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. That was very interesting. And indeed, the confirmation is that there are currently more fiscal space for member states, and hopefully we will see the translation of this into the social housing sector, which by a sense is a very typical sector which suffer from structural low investment, public investment, even prior to the pandemic. And with increasing housing needs, will need an increasing effort on public investment. Finally, we'll go to our final speaker, Luca Di Antonio from DG Reform, which is the Directorate General for the Structural Reform Support, which is supposed to help countries to design and implement reforms with the view of increasing job and growth and sustainable development. So, Luca, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Please allow me to express my happiness. I'm very glad to be as part of this important event. And now I'm trying to share my screen, and I really hope I can success it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it works well.
Excellent. So my name is Luca Di Antonio. As you said, I'm a policy officer in this relatively new Directorate General, DG Reform. I will give a brief presentation on the tools behind the technical support that could be useful for building renovation purposes. So I will. Yes. So first of all, this relatively new DG has the mandate, among the other things, to implement, oversees, and steers the technical support instrument as successor of the previous structural reform support program. So it's part of the MFF, and it's also part of the more broad package as the recovery plan for Europe. This budget has been increased compared to the structural reform support program, up to 864 million as current prices, and the technical support instrument has the strong mandate to improve member states' administrative capacity to design, develop, and implement reforms. From these elements, it is clear that the technical support instrument is fully and entirely addressed to member states, and we, as DG Reform, we fully operate on a member state mandate. So we are at the service of the member state. What we do in terms of, especially of implementation of the technical support instrument, the technical support instrument offers this technical support, as I said, for the design and implementation of new structural reforms. So through the DG Reform, we provide expertise, not exactly funding. So there is no direct financing for the member states. In this respect, DG Reform can be seen as a strategic partner. We provide, as we said, support to all the EU member states upon their explicit request, addressing a wide range of reform areas, including, of course, green and digital transition that are our pillars, I would say. covering the entire life cycle of the reform from the design to the implementation, and providing a support that is tailor-made and that could be rapidly delivered. No co-financing requirement for the technical support instrument and the implementation of the related requests. We have a brochure also, and the link to the brochure will be at the final slide. Concerning how we carry out our mandate. So, as we said, the main objective is to support member states on policy reforms acting upon member states' requests. We have, I would say, an annual cycle. The technical support instrument has been approved, has been entered in force from 2021 to 2027. The budget is spent on annual allocations, and we use some months to for a preparatory work with the member states on priority requests from them. So we work very close hand in hand with them. Prior to the submission or the formal submission of the request, that in general takes place in October, then we have a period of analysis and selection of the requests that will involve all the directory and all the services in the European Commission. And then, based on this, I would say, competitive process, competitive among the member states, we will select the requests, and then we will design the project based on the selected requests. And the project will be launched after, of course, the various administrative procedures. So this is our timeline, how we work. Clearly, we have technical expertise also in buildings renovation. We have the possibility to cover this topic. We are covering this topic since years, since the structural reform support program, I would say. And in particular, our work on renovation to support the member states was mainly focused on, for instance, the strategic framework linked, for instance, again, to national energy climate plans or to long-term renovation strategies. In some other projects, we were more focused on public buildings renovation and management, as well as on energy poverty aspects and worst performing buildings. But also other projects touched the raising awareness for citizens. And also we are promoting the effective use of innovative finance and digital instruments, but also to develop strategies for more energy efficient heating and cooling system. I think that I can, yes, I can provide you some examples in terms of titles. We supported, or we are supporting, Ireland on public buildings investment program, Italy on a couple of projects on for the real estate agency on innovative assessments of the public real estate investments, Greece, public building energy efficiency plans and energy registry, Czech Republic on energy efficiency awareness, Slovenia on heating and cooling strategy, Hungary, a very big project for the roadmap for scaling up energy efficiency in buildings, and Poland to set up new energy efficiency expert platform. Going a bit into the details of a couple of projects, for instance, for Hungary, engaged as to understand what are the specific barriers for the deployment of energy efficiency measures. In this respect, the technical support can be instrumental to overcome these barriers. The project has recently concluded, and the country was interested in receiving an analysis on how to scale up renovation in the longer term. In particular, we focused on the barriers to investment and designing possible support programs that could address some of these barriers. We consulted other commission services, and then we considered the stakeholders to engage with the EBRD as a partner. And then we designed this project first assessment based on building sector modeling, assessment of energy efficiency potential in building stock, looking at renovation packages, what are the cost optimal renovation characteristic, and what are also the needs to be addressed in that respect. And the results, for instance, revealed that both residential and public sectors could avoid up to 60% of the final energy demand through an increase of renovations. So through also workshop and desk research, at the end of the day, we provided the input for the formulation of their national long-term renovation strategy. Another example could be for Poland. We have been engaged from the Polish authorities in order to establish an energy efficiency experts platform, in particular to derive examples from other member states' best practices. So the need, of course, is for the property owners and the potential beneficiary of any possible financial programs related to buildings to easily find a contact of a competent and trustworthy energy efficiency expert. We provided support through integrated databases and define a framework to identify energy efficiency expert candidates. We designed entirely an energy efficiency expert platform to prepare. We prepared a communication strategy, and we support also a pilot use of this platform. As a result, so we established this user-friendly energy efficiency platform, and we increased the number of households that apply and that have benefit from grants. These are just a couple of examples. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a series of institutional brochures made available at the various links. And that's the end of my presentation. Really, thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca. That's very interesting. We really feel that we are at the core of the discussion about what needs to be done in terms of rules, mechanisms, structure to help deliver on the recovery and resilience plans. So we're going to have probably the next 5 years will be very challenging on this front, but it will be very crucial because this is just the beginning of a long-term journey towards a fair energy transition in the socializing sector. This being said, the time is flying, so it's already time for us to go to the conclusion. So I will give the floor to Barbara Stenbergen from the International Union of Tenants and Sorka Edwards, Secretary General of Housing Europe. Barbara and Sorka will wrap up in a few minutes, and thank you very much from my side. So Barbara, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for this great presentations. It was extremely interesting to learn. We are indeed at a cornerstone now from the European policy, together with the social and affordable housing landlords with Housing Europe. We have been fighting for so many years to have more affordable rental housing all over Europe. And obviously, we have now the real chance to get so far. We hope that the support of the member states will stay on, not only during the recovery and resilience plans, but also further on, because investment in housing is something we need to do for decades. We are counting in real estate in decades, not in years. So this is a startup, I would say a very promising startup. I was extremely impressed about, let's say, the examples from the south, from Portugal, and also from Greece, that they really wanted to start up new affordable social housing programs. We all know that in Greece, we nearly have no social housing, zero. So this is really a complete change of the entire system. And this is absolutely promising for us. And why is that the case? Because I think we, the residents, the tenants, together with the housing landlords, the not-for-profit housing landlords, we have to fight for this change. And I'm happy to do this now as a startup. And I think this conference is one of a starting point in a long row, which we will do together. And I'm happy we can do it together with Housing Europe.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And like you, I'm really impressed by this first session. Obviously, I think, as Julian said, the next few years are going to be crucial. There's a lot of pieces to put together to make this finance flow to the projects where it would be most effective and where we can really build back better. So we, I think we need special congratulations to Edith Lakatos. It's been quite a detective work that she's carried out over the last months together with our colleagues at the European Commission, trying to put together a picture of where we stand right now. Obviously, it's just a preliminary effort, and a more full picture will be provided after the summer. But we can already see, I think we kicked off the session with Commissioner Ferreira talking about how we can turn lofty policy goals, like the renovation wave, like the Green Deal, and like the new Bauhaus, turn those into real projects on the ground. And indeed, Bent Manson said this indeed is the challenge. How can we make them a reality? And then today's session showed, we got some pictures from the ground, so the wheels are in motion. The renovations are taking place. However, we do also see that there is a gap. So the wheels are in motion, but those wheels need to be oiled. And while in some cases there is sufficient funding on the table, there's definitely quite significant gaps to be fulfilled. So I think what made me my ears prick up there during our session is the open invitation to a public debate on the fiscal rules. And I think this is where we really have an opportunity in Europe to realize that investment in better homes, particularly in non-for-profit homes, in homes where people have security of tenure in the long term, homes that are affordable in the long term, is an investment. It's not a cost. And I think we will be making the case during that public debate on our future fiscal rules that this is one of the best investments that Europe and the member states can make. I think we might, for a change, even be taking a leaf out of a book from across the ocean in the US, where President Biden has announced an intention to invest 213 billion euro into building social and affordable housing and maintaining a social and affordable housing. So we can see that there they are convinced that this investment in better quality homes, where, as your president said, Barbara, where every child in Europe can live in a safe and green home, is an investment for our future. It is not to be seen as a cost or a state aid or free money. And I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime for us to turn this around when we have that public debate and make this sector really a central point of building back better, and show that those organizations can really be the businesses of the future that are investing in people. So thank you very much. Great session and great work to all those involved.
Thank you, Sorka. Thank you, Barbara. The Renovation Summit goes on. In 10 minutes, we have another session on people driving the change, which is needed change. So stay connected.